All right, everybody, welcome back to the Former Jake Show. I'm so pumped today because we have a special guest that I don't even know very well yet, but I've heard a lot about him. And the more I've researched him, I've been just so amazed because he's been in this industry longer than I've been alive. So a lot to learn today. We've got with us Ronald Stair. He goes by Ron, if that's okay, Ron. And he's the CEO of Creative Plan Design. So Ron, give us your origin story. Tell us a little bit how you ended up in this industry, why you stuck around, and what you enjoy about it.
Well, I wanted nothing to do with it initially, but I had an undergraduate math teacher that made us take a corresponding actuarial exam each semester if there was one. So when I finished my bachelor's, I had 4 parts. When I started grad school, I didn't want to be a teaching assistant because I have no patience to teach. Went to work at an actuarial firm. ERISA came out, and the guy that owned the firm threw it on my desk and said, "Learn this."
Nice.
And that was the start of it. I did this all through grad school, left for 1 semester at the end of when I finished my doctorate. I finished 1 semester, taught nuclear medicine for a semester, realized I still hated teaching, called the former owner up. I said, "Can I please come back?" He said, "Yes, but only if you buy the place." And that was in 1979.
Nice. So the timing was just kind of all came together for you.
You know,
interesting.
He was in that realm of he was a general agent for an insurance company which managed most pension plans at that time, and the insurance company had mandatory retirement at 65. So he left and took off and actually went and started another TPA firm in California. Worked until he was 93.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. But you're
he had, but that's okay.
Nice. So are you originally from New York, Long Island area, or did you end up there?
I was in the military. I lived all over the world and just ended up here by accident.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's interesting. You know, your practice, your firm is right there in the heart of Long Island, which I'm sure is unique. I don't think there's a lot of TPAs around that area, even though there's a lot of businesses that probably need some serious help.
There are 291 firms that say they're TPA firms within 75 miles of Manhattan.
Okay.
I've only got 8 competitors.
Meaning specialists that are only TPA.
Well, most TPAs don't have to know anything. They can hang out a shingle and say this is what they do.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. That's kind of something that I've been trying to do better at helping advisors understand, because when I jumped in to the 401k world, I'd been an advisor 10 years and I still felt like I knew nothing. Like it took me a couple of years to really figure out what was going on. And the TPA is such a critical part of an advisor's success. I really believe that. I'm a huge fan of TPAs, and this big push to go bundled, it was something that I got caught up in early on in my career because I didn't get it. It didn't click. So that's what I wanted to get to the bottom of with you is like, what makes a TPA different from another? What really makes them stand out, and how do you select the right TPA as an advisor?
And that's a very good question, because the civilians have no idea, and the civilians are actually anybody outside of the TPA world, inclusive of the FAs who work in the space. Mm-hmm. So when we look at a lot of places, if somebody's been around for a long time, the first thing that most financial advisors look for that are not experienced is cost. They are always leading with price because they have no personal value. So I'm going to bring you the cheapest TPA and save you a few dollars there. Or they're going to bring a TPA who doesn't care, and they're manipulated by the financial advisor because of they're seduced by that relationship. You know, I want you to send me your business, so I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. So we see a lot of garbage.
It's true.
But the civilian doesn't know that.
I agree.
So
the difference of a few $100, you know, can mean the world. Like that's the part that I've learned over the years.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at a case now. One of the insurance companies said, "Oh, we're going to do, you know, we have a free 401k package." Nobody likes you that much. But I'm going to take on the liability, do the work, and I'm going to do it for free because, well, you know, you're adorable. That's not happening. But yet,
nothing's free.
nobody seems to ask that question is, how are people getting paid? And when you look at, and again, we don't sell product, we're a non-producing TPA. So when you look at the internal expenses, and I had this conversation with a client yesterday. I said, you're going to have to stand there at the labor department, audit you, and with a straight face say, I really thought they liked me this much. Because when you realize that 20% of the money had to be in that particular company's target date funds, why? Well, this is how they're getting paid. And that's okay, but the client's supposed to understand that.
Yep. Yeah, transparency and understanding is so critical, and yet we think we've come a long ways, but I really think we've got a long ways still to go to where the end consumer really gets it and sees, because I hear that all the time. Hey, my plan's free. It doesn't cost anything.
And all of this consolidation, I mean, this whole race to the bottom between MEPs and PEPs and PEOs and ASOs, and it's like, who cares? You're calling that 1-800 bite me number. California, they're more polite. It's 1-800 go away. You get this level 3 snuffy answering the phone. They have 4.5 hours of training in their flashcards. And that's the gatekeeper for, I don't know how many trillions of dollars of 401k money. And their job is to make sure you don't go any further.
Right.
Some of these big box places, there's not a phone number anywhere at their website. You have to send them an email for them to maybe call you back, and maybe you'll remember what the question was 3 days later. Or we're going to take people out of the equation completely, and you're going to do it yourself. So we have one client that we're taking over right now that was with one of the providers where it was a la carte on the menu. He never checked the box to tell them that he wanted them to do the 5,500. They're a TPA for 9 years on this plan. There's no 5,500 done.
Oh no.
He says,
How
how
much
much is to check the box?
Yeah.
The second one we have sitting there, he never checked the box and said he wanted an ADP test done. So the plan hasn't been tested for 4 years. He saw it was a $350 charge. He didn't want to do it, so he didn't check the box.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, that's the scary part of this business, is that the end company paying for these services thinks they're hiring someone to look out for them.
Well, a lot of it's brands. They follow that brand.
Yeah.
And there are some very big brands that have excellent investments, but they are really horrible at the TPA side.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And in many cases, the FA hands it off to the big box and assumes it's being done right and stays out of it. And that's a disconnect.
Right.
The client doesn't know what questions to ask.
Yeah, and that's I guess where I'd like to get your thoughts on how do we get more training in the whole industry? Because when I jumped in, my training came from wholesalers, which was a terrible, terrible thing to do. And I had luckily a couple of decent ones, but those good ones, they weren't from record keepers. They were from a TPA. And luckily for me, they taught me some stuff that even though they probably weren't getting all the deals sent to them, and now I'm very loyal to those two that were very supportive of me, but they looked out for me, not just for them, which is very rare in the industry. So how do we change that? Does it come, do you think, from training wholesalers better? Does it come from like a different associations? Like how do we make a change on that?
You know, I think it's sort of a team approach with everybody, because the BDs and the wires have to do a better job of educating their FAs.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wholesalers, to a large extent, are pretty well educated, but not as much as they should be in the aggregate. You know, they think it. You know, again, they're selling stuff. They're a volume business, and they are a low margin volume business. They have to sell a lot of stuff. And so they're going to do stuff that sometimes it's questionable. We looked at a case today where The client really has 140 people in there and they have $5.3 million. Well, the proposal on the change from one record keeper to another showed $6 million and 100 people. Why do you get the average account balance up to get the fees down? It showed $1 million in the fixed account when there's only really $300,000 in the fixed account. And the fees are really much more attractive than they would be if the fact patterns were the same. And the FAA didn't understand what was going on here. And that was just a bad wholesaler.
Yeah.
Again, I don't care. I'm not getting paid by the assets.
Right. Right. And that's something I battle with record keepers, right? I see, some of them moving to the flat fee, some of them will do both. Some are sticking with the asset-based fee, and they're fighting this whole, I think, discussion around they're a commodity. And in a lot of ways, I think the record keeping piece is. I think it's more of a commodity than the administration by far, because your job as a TPA is to understand the client's situation and goals and know how to not only figure out the plan design, but to keep them on track with that design and make sure that all the numbers line up with what they said they're going to do. And so, to me, there needs to be more upside for what you do versus what the record keeper is providing. That's my opinion. What do you think?
I am a little cynical in it. I think that certain things are commodities in the business. Clearly, the assets are a commodity. Record keeping is a commodity. Now, some record keeping is going to be more expensive than others because the website is more robust and they spend a little more money on technology or security, or it's just easier to use. Those things, those refinements cost money. But record keeping should be somewhere around a base of, I don't know, $1,500 to $2,000 and a per participant charge based on the side of the plan from maybe 70 down to 50. That's probably a real intrinsic cost of record keeping. And years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I think it was American Funds and Oppenheimer and John Hancock were the first ones to actually segregate record keeping and push it out there and say, this is the cost of record keeping and this is our minimum to do this plan. And everybody else who hid those fees went, oh, how did you do that? Well, that was the first attempt at transparency.
Right.
Okay. So when you get these firms that are charging asset-based charges on record keeping, it makes no sense to me. Because if you're record keeping my account with $1 million versus one of my employees' accounts at $10,000, it's the exact same amount of work electronically to record keep those two accounts.
Yeah.
So why am I paying an asset charge on that?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a very valid point that I've brought up many times. And I'm dealing with a lot of physician groups. That's kind of my niche. In my book of businesses, I'm dealing with these high asset, low head count accounts. And yeah, asset-based fees are the worst for them. So,
so I think the financial advisor is not a commodity. I think the TPA is not a commodity. But in terms of the record keepers and the people selling product, all that product is a commodity. So it really comes down to what service are you getting? Where is your value from what you're buying?
Yeah.
And sometimes the value is the right record keeper is going to make the FA's life easier. I know in my world, we have different pricing for different record keepers because some are just obnoxious to deal with.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the amount of time it takes us to do a plan with certain record keepers versus others. Some make it easy. Some make it horrible. Every plan will eventually have a problem. Somebody will transpose a number. Payroll, us, client, somebody will transpose a number someplace. Nothing balances at the end of the quarter. Who owns that problem with us to help us find it?
Right. Yeah.
And those record keepers I gravitate towards. We have we have a bunch of bumper stickers in our office. Bumper sticker quotes. Every 401k plan has at least one female participant married to the world's greatest investment jerk. Make your life miserable. Because the account will be off $32 and nobody knows where it is. I need a record keeper to participate with me at that point.
Yeah, and you were doing this before before the big record keeping became a standard thing, right? When it was just brokerage accounts with.
I mean, we put in 401k plans literally in 1979.
What was that like? Were you just basically getting mail sent in each
Well, we just
quarter,
called
each
our
month?
clients. Well, actually, at the time, there was no ADP test the first couple of years. We would just call our clients up and say, you could put away another $7,500 for yourself this year if you want to do this 401k thing. And
Wow.
clients, sure, I don't have to give my employees any more money. I'm there.
Yeah.
I mean, this was even before old comparability, never mind new comparability. This was just, we had integrated allocations. And here was another $7,500.
Yeah. Does it seem like it seems like we've had a lot of new regulations coming out. Obviously COVID kind of caused some extra ones, but do you feel like that the extra regulations and things have all been, is that a positive thing, or do you think it's making it way more complex than maybe it should be from?
Some of it's, it's like everything else. There's good and bad with all of it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the desire to protect the participant, but the lawsuits are out of hand because nobody's getting anything out of it except the lawyers. Nobody gives a rat's ass about the last 10 basis points because nobody even knows what 10 basis points are, including the FAs I deal with.
Yeah.
They just don't. And that's not anybody's focus, but that's the only question anybody knows to focus on. But eventually, why did I pick a particular fund line up in my account? Because my FA sat down with me and said, this is the best mix for your demographics of your employees. So do I buy the cheapest fund, or do I buy the fund that's going to give me the best value, in my opinion, as the plan trustee? And so you start seeing these lawsuits about record keeping fees. We're back to, well, record keeping is not necessarily $25 a head because the plan is large, if I'm not getting the service that I'm supposed to get from the record keeper. But the focus is never on value or service. So the laws are cumbersome.
Yeah.
We get, that the IRS and Treasury, which are really two different departments for different agendas, and then you get the PBGC, and then you get the DOL, and they're writing regulations inside a vacuum. They don't care what the three agencies are doing.
That's the feeling I get as well, is they're not living in the real world with some of the things that they're looking at. And I hear that even from different wholesalers and different people in the industry. Have they ever actually ran a payroll for a 401k plan? No, they don't even. Some of the things they say, I'm just thinking, have you ever sat down and done this yourself? Because that's when you really learn, when you become a business owner.
Well, one of the things I tell my staff all the time, and there's a few things that we do that's I think is a little unusual from a staff perspective, but we will sit down when new regulations come out. And pre-COVID, we'd said every so often have 3 or 4 people sitting in the conference room, and we'd read new regulations out loud because your ears will catch stuff that the eyes don't. And sometimes it's that, where is the punctuation? Where is the vocal inflection? And it gives different meaning to the words.
Mm-hmm.
What's clear is people who write rules do not administer plans, don't understand tax, and really don't understand the math. They just don't understand the math and what they're asking people to do.
Yeah, and as I've been more supportive of TPAs, the further I get in my career, it's funny. I like what they do. I rely on them a ton in my book of business, but I also find that because of the regulations and because of lawsuits, they're caught in this storm of everything has to be custom and everything is just way more complex than it should be. Because when I look at it from the business owner's perspective, they just want a 401k. Like they don't, when they open the Pandora's box of now I want to own a 401k and they realize it's not just like add one to my company, it's a very long and lengthy discussion. It almost overwhelms them initially. I just got a call today from a new opportunity. It's this 160 person group, has no plan in place. And I don't think they realize what they're about to get into from a plan design standpoint and discussion around what they're going to do. It's a lot more in depth than they think. So there's like this piece of me that wants to see it be simplified, but then I also value the real expertise that has to come from someone on the TPA level. So it's fascinating to see what's going
Back to
on.
this whole hierarchy. You know, in this whole race to the bottom, I've got a computer and a piece of software. Then I have a computer with some artificial intelligence and a piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
Now, artificial intelligence will never replace real stupidity. So whoever is putting data in or manipulating that data at the other end, it doesn't matter how smart the software is. Then you've got really robust computers with really good artificial intelligence. Then you've got somebody with as a human being at the other end answering your questions if you understand what questions to ask.
Right.
It just keeps going up the hierarchy of high criteria till you get firms like ours where everybody is credentialed, including the support staff. The administrators do 70 hours a year of CE. That's what I require. CFEC certified. We've got 12 treasury designations in the office, people that are enrolled at some level or another. This is who we are. But we're competing with the guy with a piece of software working out of his garage. And there's everything in between.
Right.
And it's tough to know. There's an enormous amount of stuff to know.
Yeah. There's so much. It's mind-blowing how much you have to know.
And I tell people, I don't care about the employees. Is the same. Am I still there? Looks like
Yeah, you're here. I lost you for a second. You're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, if we liked all employees the same, they'd all be getting paid the same. And the pension plan is really deferred comp. It's qualified deferred compensation. It's part of the compensation package. So I don't necessarily have to treat them all the same because they're not all the same. At least not in my value proposition when I'm talking to owners. Now,
Right.
the interesting thing is two of our record keepers did studies and said the plans that we administer in our general area have average account balances that are about 40% higher than some of the other TPA firms. And it purely comes down to plan design.
Right.
If the plan works for the business owner, they put more money in the plan.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And that's the design changes over time. That's what I'm constantly trying to teach either advisors and
Probably every
plan
18
sponsors.
18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
What I know absolutely is true is next year your cash flow is going to be different, the tax laws are going to be different, your demographics are going to be different. One of those three things is going to change, if not all three.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a definitely a fluid movement. That's why making sure you have a solid administration team, TPA team behind you in the very beginning can be critical. It is critical, but a lot of people are going to this new, this low cost bundled solutions. And we're still, the top of the most plans sold is still Paychecks and ADP, right? That's the part I'm trying to wrap my head around. What is going on over there? Is it purely just sales training? Because most of the most successful people I know in this industry, they started at Paychecks or ADP. I constantly find that.
Those people have excellent sales training. No technical skills, but excellent sales training.
Right. They're selling stuff, but they never stay there. And they don't keep all the plans. I mean, they're not the leader in the plans, but like they're doing something right, at least getting the deal done. So how do we take what's good there and add some better plan design and long-term thinking and patience to that process so that we can prevent some of these lawsuits and other problems that we're seeing and more regulation? I feel like that's a real core thing we need to, as an industry, start to figure out.
In my office, she's come up with this whole thing of unbundled is the new black. Unbundled, bundled. We have a relationship with a couple of different payroll providers, 2 or 3 of our preferred record keepers, and a handful of advisors, and an outsourced HR company. It's a de facto PEO without being a PEO, which you can unwind either any part at any time because it's not a single silo for people. And
Hmm.
people come in and take what they want out of that arrangement. But it's fairly seamless for us to work together because we've gotten very comfortable in that space. And it's just simply a way to plug and play the pieces that the client needs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
But,
What?
we try to also talk to people about the high cost of low price. If I have to subsidize payroll because I've got your 401k, well, we'll forget the triple case that says you're not supposed to do that. That's a whole fiduciary issue.
Hmm.
So you're back to those kinds of educational components with clients. Now, at this point, their eyes completely glaze over.
Yeah.
But there are people who care about it.
Yeah. There's definitely a level of experience the different HR people or payroll people will go through where they learn the high cost of low cost solutions, right? And those are the people that I like to work with because they've seen the problems firsthand. They've been in it, and I think we're constantly overlooking the data. Like you said, bad data in is not going to help anybody. But what's our solution to create a PEP? Like I just don't see that being the thing that's going to even touch that problem of you every 2 weeks someone's putting numbers in a system paying people.
There's a lot of business out there. If I get 0.1% of the business in the metropolitan area, I'm going to be very, very wealthy. How much do you need? How much can you support properly? That's a better question.
Yeah.
We have turned away business at certain times because our staff was stressed and we wouldn't be able to service it properly, so we didn't take it in.
I've found that a couple times with different TPAs. I've had that happen. And I think that is really a bold move to turn away business because you want to take care of the clients you already have. And you don't see that in a lot of industries. So I have been impressed by that.
In our shop, the client's not always right. My employees are right.
Yeah.
But if my employees are happy and they're rested and they're treated well, it translates into a better client experience.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So we've gone to a permanent 4-day work week. The office is open 5 days, but the employees work 4. Because I really do believe in that work-life balance.
So I'm getting the feel. So you've got some pretty strict, things that have driven your culture to be such a successful TPA for, over 40 years. You've got your requiring credentials and continuing education. And even the 4-day work week, like it sounds to me like you figured things out in a way that most businesses don't do. I don't think a similar approach. They just look at what their competition is doing and kind of copy. Obviously it's worked out well for you.
It's worked out well, and we have a very cool group of people at the office. We've got an array of personalities like most TPA firms have. I try not to make as much fun of my employees as I used to because HR.
What are your thoughts? We've seen a lot of, mergers, acquisitions, things going on in the record keeping space with the big one with MassMutual and Empower. But what I mentioned in a post that John Sullivan over at 401k Specialist was talking about, what's the next big one we're going to see? And I said, I'm really kind of watching what a census is doing with Future Plan. They're gobbling up TPAs all over the country. No one's talking about that. Like, what are your thoughts on that kind of that move that they're making?
I don't know. Still 57 different companies with the same business card.
Yeah. The integration's not there yet. I don't know if it ever will be.
I don't know. And again, where is the efficiency?
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know where the efficiencies are in that. I mean, they have some excellent firms that they have acquired. They have, you know, really a strong actuarial presence in Kravitz. You know, so there's a lot of very positive components to it.
Mm-hmm.
But every so often when I'm dealing with clients, there's just a disjointed kind of a feeling, and that could just be purely from size. That how do you get it together?
Yeah, that's what I've noticed, and I've been really pretty loud about it over there with the census and saying we got to figure this out, because I do a lot of cash balance plans and in the physician space, and so I've got a mix of those, and their pricing works really well for that niche for me. And so some of I think the communication I've been hoping to see there. So we'll see where it goes, but I think it's kind of a secret move going on behind the scenes that I don't think most people are paying attention to.
Well, eventually at some point, you run out of zero to go to. You're not going to start doing negative. You know, this is not going to become like a mortgage in Sweden where the bank is paying you to take money. That's not going to happen here.
Yeah.
And eventually there's going to be some companies that are publicly owned that have to answer to stockholders. Because when you get that big, you're going to have public entity issues.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to show a real profit.
Yeah.
People still cost what they cost. And technology is going to be the same for almost everybody. So the difference is the quality of the people. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the quality of the people and how much money you spend to train them and how much time you give them to be trained. So in the last 2 years, I've hired 3 people from other firms, all of whom have over 20 years experience. And they walked in the door and I said, you've got 18 to 24 months to get a credential, because they didn't have one. How are you in this business for 20 years and not have a credential? And I'm not hung up on the credential per se, but when you go through that process, you discover the things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
But people knew nothing about control groups or affiliated service groups. You know, so you find those things out while you're going through that process. You learn it. And then the robust nature of continuing education that we force keeps it fresh in everybody's mind.
Yeah, that's really good.
We have some. Our client base is very diverse. We've got a bunch of entertainment types. We've got about 300 medical practices, pretty well divided between medicine and dentistry. We've got international manufacturing firms. So I am licensed now in the UK.
Oh, wow. So what's that like? I mean, they have a much different system, right? So
it's obnoxious. But, you know, we had so many clients that were UK based where we're dealing with their subsidiaries here and their citizens are going back and forth. And the first thing that really affected us was about 3 years ago. We realized our cybersecurity was dirt in comparison to what the EU required. Because their standards are horrific. Good for the client, horrifically expensive to maintain.
Yeah. As far as data back and forth.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was okay. You know, that put us ahead of the curve now for what we see going on with the COVID virus. You know, everybody's attacking. You know, the bad guys are coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. Yeah, that's only going to get harder and harder to
we're very comfortable in where we are with that. Mm-hmm. But when we're looking at clients in, I think we're in 29 states now in 9 countries. And, you know, the clients have employees that are moving around from one jurisdiction to another, and they morph in and out of the system. And it's just, it keeps me interested.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, you've definitely put a lot of effort into to continue to get better. Tell me what your thoughts are as far as like the next thing. I mean, obviously top of everybody's minds, the PEPs, but like, what is something you wish this industry as a whole, or even just the TPA industry would figure out, or would make everyone's lives better? Like what's the thing that just seems next to impossible that?
Well, next to impossible is going to require some sort of licensing or credentialing for anybody to do this stuff.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
At a very minimum, require something.
Yeah.
We have a
So
new client that's looking at $1 million plus of excise taxes, and the guy that was doing his work had an outsourced actuary, like 85 years old, and nobody has any E&O coverage.
yeah, so there's really no regulation. I mean, you don't have to report. I mean, the DOL and IRS are more mainly looking out for plan sponsors, but there's no one really watching TPAs as a whole. Like
Nobody's watching it, and
no gatekeeper.
as bad as a lot of the FAs are, and they're not all bad, but as bad as many of them are, they at least go take a test at one point and pass it. They have learned something.
Yeah.
With any of the BDs or the wirehouses, somebody is watching them from a compliance perspective. And there's a little bit of checks and balances in almost every aspect of the retirement world, with the exception of the TPAs.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. I had never thought of that before. Yeah, I mean, and it is sad, like even as financial advisors, it's getting easier because we're not in that broker dealer world. Because I had all my broker dealer stuff, back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I let them all drop off because I'm just with an RIA now. So I only use my 66. But even then, a 401k is like 1-2 pages maybe of what I had to study, right? You don't even get into plan design at all or anything like that.
When you start looking at, when you think about the regulation in 401k space, and forget 401k, just look at pensions in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $25 trillion, $26 trillion in qualified money somewhere. It's all the cash that's in our society is sitting in these retirement plans, because that's what's funding the banks and the brokerage houses, and driving the stock market. It's just all pension money being reinvested somewhere. And it's inside all of this 401k ERISA world, whether it's an IRA or a SEP or it's somewhere between 400 and 436 of the code, 401 to 436 of the code. That's where it's sitting. The majority of the value of any tangible dollar in the United States. That's where it is.
Yeah.
Heavily overregulated. So why do we let amateurs touch it?
That is an amazing question.
And what's coming? So when you want to talk about MEPs and PEPs and all of that, it's not my marketplace. Personally, I'm a cynic. I think there's just another money grab, and it's another way to hide fees. I think it's going to become very sticky and more cumbersome for the client to leave. So that's the first part. The second part is we're going to have state plans in larger quantity. I just love that Illinois is actually exploring the fact that they're going to use Illinois state bonds to fund your mandated 401k plan in the private sector, so you can fund the public sector's plans that are totally underfunded. That makes great sense to me. I really want California, who's $1.2 trillion underwater, to manage my 401k plan. Why would I want that?
Yeah, that's quite a nightmare right now.
It creates awareness. That's the good news. It's going to create a lot of awareness, and business owners are going to say, I don't want that crap. And then they're going to come to people like us.
Yeah. And that's what's been, I think, a big opportunity for the right people that go at this Cal Savers thing from the right angle. It's whether or not the business owners will take the time to really wrap their head around it and actually look at the numbers. And
in the aggregate, it's going to be, from a societal perspective, even if it's a really bad 401k plan for the employees, it's a plan. It's more than they had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be okay. And eventually people will morph out of that into something that's more cost effective or better run.
Yeah.
So
it drives awareness to the problem, and that's good.
one of the regulations I think we're going to get is they're going to require us to show the annuitization value of a lump sum out of a DC plan. Now, prior to 1984, we had to do that. So when somebody took their lump sum, we had to give them all their different annuity options, and that went away in 84. Were you born yet? No.
I was born in 82. I was around. I didn't have a plan yet.
You know, the problem is people are innumerates. As a society, we're far more innumerate than we are illiterate. And if somebody comes out of their 401k plan and they think, oh, I've got $100,000, I'm good. They have no idea how long that money's not going to last them. And the annuitization demonstration, I think, is a powerful tool. Depressing for some cases, but it's powerful because it's an awareness again.
Yeah. Yeah. It puts them in the right mindset, right? Because that's how everyone thinks month to month. But I was going through this with a record keeper yesterday. They were trying to build that out on their platform and showing the number they had to have to live off a certain dollar amount. And it was a lot of times just a crazy number that to me, it does the opposite effect when I sit down with a 22-year-old or 21-year-old. Oh, I got to have this much money. They just almost like give up before they even started trying. It's just interesting.
That becomes a problem. You know, and one of the stories I was telling somebody this morning about this. One of our new celebrity clients is a reality TV person. And she's like 23 years old. And she says, can I put in a defined benefit plan? Yeah, sure. You're not going to put, you know, you're 23 years old. She says, but if I do that, because we went through the 401k thing with her. She says, I said, you know, this is going to fall off. We're going to fund this for 5 or 6 years, and you're going to run out of room just because you're out of runway at your age. She said, yeah, but how long do you think this reality TV gig's going to last? Well, maybe not the 5 years. Fine, let's do it. Because in her calculation, she says, this will give me like $4.5 million by the time I'm 60. Unusual.
Yeah.
20s that thinks that far ahead like that. But they're out there. But a lot of it's education.
So in those settings, I've never really dealt with a plan like that. So someone like a celebrity of some kind that has, do they get paid 1099 and then you just set up a plan for them individually?
Depends on who they are and how they're getting paid. So
interesting. Sorry, what were you saying? So it depends how they're paid, right? Then you design the plan.
Okay, so the authors are easy. They're just individually paid. The actors, most of them have what they call loan-out corporations. So they don't get paid directly. They have a corporation that gets paid. Mm-hmm. And there's rules that come into play to figure out where the guild plans, because they are still part of the Screen Actors Guild, and they have part of that plan. And there are rules how do we recognize the value in the Screen Actors plan versus their own plan. And there's a bit of an offset sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, each one is different, but for the most part, they're getting paid to an entity of their own choosing. But the cash flow is wildly fluctuating from year to year.
Right.
And then, you know, you get a movie star, they make a couple of movies, or they have a really big hit movie, and you know, maybe they'll have $5 million in a year. But then they may not have anything for the next 3. So when you're setting up a cash balance plan, how do you manage that cash flow from one year to the next?
Yeah.
And that becomes sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's a tough thing. Wow.
So, you know, and again, I don't want to bore you with some of the stuff that we try to do, but
well, and that goes back to one of the big things I always tell advisors is, and even wholesalers, like, know who you want to help. Like, stop defining your niche by the size of plan. Like, figure out what type of client, what industry, and go in on all that. Like, become the person for that industry, because you're not only going to be an expert there, you're not going to waste your time trying to learn everything all the time and muddy the waters. Like, know your space. So I'm glad I know someone now that's in that space. I've always been curious how
Well,
that's done.
I'm sure you've seen Simon Sinek's Know Your Why.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to find what your why is. My why is to drag as many people to retirement as I can.
Hmm.
I want to get you there. And that just colors all of the consulting that we do with people. So I will do 50 hours a year of accounting CE. I do 20 hours a year of legal CE because I want to know how to educate their other advisors. And more importantly, I want to understand what they're saying when you're talking and I don't have a decoder ring.
Right. Right. That's incredible. After
like 199A, sometimes our deduction's worth $1.20, and other times it's only worth 80 cents. So where do you want to push this money around to maximize the efficiency of the plan?
yeah, those are details that are always constantly moving and changing. So the amount of CE that you're still doing, that's
Back in March
crazy.
when COVID hit, I was on the phone, without exaggeration, 60 hours a week for the first 4 weeks, calling every client. We froze all but 4 of our defined benefit plans. We suspended the safe harbor 401k for probably half of our 401ks.
Wow.
Because they hadn't funded 19 yet. They did all their tax planning based around coming into a phrase where they were going to have no money. And we could always unfreeze the cash balance plan by the end of the year. So my downside is you don't put away as much money this year. We can unfreeze it. We can thaw it later.
Yeah, that's smart.
401k, maybe you're going to fail ADP. We'll figure out a way to get you some money into the profit sharing side to make up the difference for you. But there's a certain amount of peace of mind too. And the clients that didn't listen to us are now complaining and have no money. My business is still not open. What do I do? And this is emotional. We're dealing with people's money's emotional.
Absolutely.
Money's emotional. And now I'm taking this lump of money, which is the largest lump of money almost everybody will ever have, and I envelope with a bunch of other bad emotions. Getting old, getting displaced, getting dead, getting divorced, getting disabled. This lump of money is in the middle of all of it. And nobody knows how to talk about it emotionally. And now I've got to take some of that money and I have to give it to them, those employee people that I'm already overpaying. And that becomes the conversation we have with folks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah,
but I think that shows, I mean, the proactive way that you did that, that's not common. I mean, I don't know many TPAs that are going to go to that length and really make that effort, because now the ones that didn't take your advice, at least you can say, we tried to tell you. And that's what's missing in a lot of relationships in this industry.
I mean, when we do a new defined benefit plan, regardless of the type of plan, we have like a 12-point bullet point kind of a document that they have to initial each line. It's like, I don't get to turn this on and off like a profit sharing plan.
Right.
If I freeze the plan, I may still have some obligation.
Yeah.
Take the plan, I may still have some obligation. And we go through that with each line, and they initial each line. And whenever they say, you never told me, yes, I did.
Yep. Yep. No, it's true. There's so much that needs to be communicated and documented that more people have to have a process in place.
People who have no plan documents. How does a TPA firm administer your plan when they don't have a signed document?
Scary.
Well, what are you administering? It's not a plan if I don't have a signed document.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not good. Yeah.
So that's what we do.
I love it, Ron. You're definitely one of the most experienced people in this space. I really thank you so much for spending time. I've been impressed. I think I'll have more questions for you. I definitely want to continue. We're trying to do more of growing our book of business to help more physicians. And so I'm in the Utah, Idaho market, but now with this stigma gone of Zoom meetings, I can get out and see you sometime.
We can have a conversation offline on this cool stuff we're doing in some of the doctors' practices. There's a lot of opportunity.
I would love that. Yeah. That's my passion, is helping physicians. I know a lot of other advisors that have, done really well. They kind of don't like to do physician plans. I run to that problem. I love it. I love that they're tough on me. I love that they question everything. They read everything. It's a fun niche to be in, but it's a hard one. But I don't recommend it to everybody.
But I found that those are the most appreciative clients at the end of the day.
Yeah, they are, because they know I'm putting the effort in, and they know that I'm looking at all the details, because they're looking at them too. And you can't fake it through that. And that's where you see some success, because you actually have results driven by people knowing what they're doing, not just assuming. So let's talk more about that. I was supposed to be out there actually running the marathon in a couple months, but maybe next year. I deferred it. So
I pay other people to do that kind of stuff. All I do at this point is jog my memory.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to connect. I'll keep in touch with you. I want to hear more about what you're doing, physicians. I'm going to just continue to try and make a movement in this industry, just like you've been doing for 40 plus years, and love to learn from those that have really, I think, developed this industry to what it is. And you're definitely one of those pioneers. So thank you so much, Ron, all you're doing. And
well, thank you for your time.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Ron.
Yes, sir. Take care.